If the approach of "why wasn't I asked" made sense here, then no one would ever have children. At this point, humanity as a whole must have collectively answered this question by choosing existence over non-existence. Today we say that humanity exists. The existence of humanity means that existence has been preferred over non-existence. If you were to ask your child, would you like to come into this life? Since it is not possible to ask such a question, a choice is made on their behalf. Someone who knows life on their behalf, even taking all the risks and knowing death, still prefers life over their non-existence. Now, let's imagine a child asking their father, "Why didn't you ask me before bringing me into the world?" Let's suppose they said that. This idea then goes against general logic. At that point, it already has no real basis in truth. Now, if this child says to their father, "You brought me into this world without asking me, so I rebel against you," it is obvious how illogical and unfair this would be. The subtle point here is this. Even in the face of death, a short life, despite all its risks, is still preferred over non-existence and is considered superior. So what does it mean to have an infinite, eternal, endless life where there is no death, no illness, no hardship, and happiness and joy last forever? Of course, preferring this over non-existence is certainly and absolutely a good thing. Since we do not know what an eternal and infinite life truly is, someone who knows the nature of eternal life has made the choice on our behalf. He has chosen our existence over our non-existence. If we object to this without knowing how great a reward and compensation it truly is, such an objection would be unjust. So, when a person enters eternal life, will they really object to it? That is a separate question for when one understands its true nature. In order to be justified, one must know what eternal happiness truly is.
So, what we understand is that coming into existence is a tremendous blessing. For a person to object to this blessing after having received it would lead to a great torment.
At this point, in order to find the truth, one must detach from the ego and self-centeredness. Now, when we look at ourselves from the outside, would you consent to a person who could have eternal life and eternal happiness, falling into eternal non-existence, that is, absolute nothingness? We can't make such a decision about a person, can we? Even a person who possesses the slightest trace of true humanity could not consent to someone going to eternal non-existence instead of eternal life. In other words, one cannot prefer eternal non-existence, absolute nothingness, over eternal life. That is, even when the subject is ourselves and not someone else, we still do not have the right to change this answer. In fact, no one has the right to do this to themselves either. After all, what leads a person to hell is that, through their wrong choices and rebellions, they cause themselves, their own soul, to lose eternal life, that is, eternal paradise, and the punishment God gives in return for losing eternal happiness is just that. The only equivalent for that is hell.